Hi, so my discipline is social studies, history, and one of the ways I think people in my content area tend to communicate is by the IRE method. I think teachers are especially bad about it. It's the IRE, initiate, respond, evaluate strategy, and it's not a bad method to use, but there are better ones out there that do more to promote quality questions. And they talk about the IRE method on page 68 of the textbook, but it's basically where the teacher initiates a question. For instance, why was George Washington important to America? The student then responds. He might say, he was the first president. And then the teacher evaluates that answer. So, yes, he was the first president, and then repeats the process by maybe initiating another question, like, in what year did George Washington become the president? So, it's not a bad method in the fact that it kind of shows a teacher what a student might already know, but it does not get the student to dig deeper. It does not get the student to learn something new. For instance, there are several things that George Washington was important to America for. He led them through the Revolutionary War. He helped build a new government. Lots of things, but the teacher doesn't know what the student does and doesn't know because the student gave a simple answer. So the student doesn't really get to learn that way. But it's not a bad method, like I said. There are better ones out there. One that I really liked for social studies, I think it really works really well, is request. And it's on page 71. The book talks about it with the questioner task card and the respondent task card. I really like this activity because I'm always looking for activities that encourage peer support. I like for students to work with partners. I like for students to work with groups. And this is a good way for students to do that, but it holds the individual student accountable for their work. It's hard sometimes with group activities and partnering up to hold individual students accountable, but it does this, and you can keep you can know what the student is asking. You can have them write it down, or you can have them discuss it with the class later on. And it gets the students thinking like historians. It makes them ask questions. It makes them read. It makes them study. And then it makes them ask questions, and not only ask themselves questions, but ask questions to another student. And then they can learn not only by asking the questions and reading the passage, but then they can learn by the answer from the other students. So I just thought it was an excellent activity, one that I could implement in the classroom, because I struggle with implementing peer support activities, group activities. And I wanted to leave you with a couple of questions. One was for my personal benefit. Do y'all know of any games that implement any of the strategies mentioned in the book, but maybe particularly the request strategy, like any games that you can think of that has students asking quality questions, that prompt thinking? And then my other question was, what do you think would be some barriers to me doing the request activity in the classroom? So what are some games that I could use to implement the strategies mentioned in the chapter? And then what are some barriers to the questioner task cards, responder task cards learning strategy?